Sunset Time by Albina Corn. Chapter 5, Dark Regalia. Twilight stood with an agitated expression as Rainbow Dash flew back and forth through the air in front of her. She, her 5 pony friends, and Spike stood in the middle of the kitchen, an awkward silence weighing in on them. "So let me get this straight," Rainbow said, ceasing her pacing. "Sunset claims to be your student from the future, who came back in time because the world ended. And future you told her to go back and stop it by fighting something called the Dark Regalia. Am I getting this right?" "Yes," Twilight said flatly. She told the entire story to the rest of the group, after Rainbow had pushed everyone into the back room and demanded more of an explanation. "That's the gist of it." "And you believe her?" Rainbow said incredulously. Twilight's expression became stern. "Yes, I do. Why shouldn't I?" "Well, first of all, doesn't her story sound kind of familiar? It sounds like she just found out about the time you time traveled. It tweaked it to sound like a better sob story." "Rainbow, why would she need to do that? To steal the alicorn amulet, duh." "Rainbow, dear," Rarity said, "no theory might hold more ground. The amulet hadn't already been stolen. Besides," Twilight added, "you believed me when I told you I had been visited by my future self. Why don't you believe her?" Rainbow tapped her hose together in a guilty manner. "Well, I kind of thought you might have finally lost it. But I went along with it because I trust you, Twilight. This girl shows up out of nowhere, lies to us, and then tells the world to go ahead unless we find the Alicorn Hamlet and the rest of this regalia stuff. Either she's plotting something, or she's crazy." "She isn't crazy," Twilight said, growing more irritated with Rainbow's stubbornness. "She isn't plotting anything. She cried her heart out this morning after waking up screaming from a nightmare. You didn't see the look she had in her eyes, Rainbow. She's been through something awful. Or she's acting." Twilight faced up, groaning in frustration. "Alright, fine, I get it. You don't trust Sunset. But you said it yourself. You trust me. So trust me enough to believe in her." Rainbow scratched her face, mulling over the proposal. She opened her mouth several times, only to close it when she see him thinking. Finally, she sighed and said, "All right, Twilight. You think she's telling the truth? Then I'll follow along. But I got my eye on her." Twilight nodded. It wasn't the ideal answer she'd been looking for, but with Rainbow Dash, it was close enough. "What about the rest of you?" She faced the rest of her friends sitting throughout the kitchen. "Well," Rarity started, "she doesn't seem evil or crazy to me." "Me neither," Vicky said. "Crazy ponies have eyes that go, oh, woo." She rolled her eyes around her head. "Besides, evil ponies don't like parties. You saw Nightmare Moon at some celebration." She crossed her hose and powdered. "Party pooper." Spike raised his hand. "I think she's telling the truth. I mean, Magic has done some crazier things, right?" Well, I don't want to believe her about the end of the world, but I don't see why she would lie about something like that. So, if you believe her, Twilight, then I'll believe her too," Firesight said, speaking for the first time since he had entered with Sakura. "Regardless of she's crazy or not, it don't take the fact someone stole the Alicorn amulet from under our noses," Abzak said. "I don't know if I believe in this whole end of the world talk, but I was like Sunset Building here and the amulet going missing ain't no coincidence." She gave him all a serious look. "We've got a thief running around with a powerful necklace, ready to do who knows what. Y'all remember what Trixie did with it. It wasn't a question. None of them could really forget how Trixie had kicked Twilight out of town and taken the control of it." Twilight nodded. "You're right. Whoever took the amulet didn't do it with good intentions. I think the best thing to do is tell Princess Celestia. She might even know something about the Dark Regalia." "Want me to send a letter?" Spike asked instinctively. "Yes, tell her we're on our way to Camelot. We have something that needs to be discussed face to face." Spike saluted and began rummaging around the kitchen for quill and paper. "Hey," Rainbow spoke up. "Is Sunset so worried about the future? Why didn't she just ask Princess Celestia for help in the first place?" "She was scared and interactions with ponies from the past would end up messing up the timeline." Justifiable fear, Twilight reasoned, but it seemed silly in hindsight. "Uh-huh," Rainbow rolled her eyes. Sunset picked at a strawberry cake in front of her. She decided to sample a piece of delicious-looking three-tiered cake while she waited for Twilight's friends to pass judgment on her. It was soft, moist, and the craving was flavorful, but it couldn't ease her troubled mind. "Twilight will fast for me," she thought, savoring a piece of malformed cake. But what if the rest of them don't believe me? What if they convince her they're thinking I'm crazy? Ugh, I just knew this was a bad idea. So he decided took another large bite of cake. It shouldn't have happened. I let the amulet slip right out under my hooves. Now I had to find the regalia and the thief. Sunset looked up from her plate towards the kitchen door. She could hear muffled voices coming from the other side, mostly Rainbow Dash's. The longer they took, the more nervous Sunset became. She glanced about the empty room, trying to distract herself. So colorfully decorated. Balloons and streamers covered the walls and confetti covered the floor. The fact there was no one else there made it seem almost depressing. Sunset finished her slice of cake and was reaching to get another when the door suddenly opened. Sunset Shimmer! Pinky says he bounced into the room. We need to certify you not guilty. Sunset blinked. Come again? She means we believe you, dear. Randy explained. Her eyes flickered towards Rainbow Dash for a split second. Or at least most of us do. Really? Sunset's heart soared at the news. He did think she was crazy. You were actually going to help her. Twice right. She should have just trusted him in the first place. Twice smiled at her and nodded. Really? I sent Princess Celestia a message as well. She's agreed to meet with us. Sunset's heart quickly pummeled in her stomach. Oh, she said in a small voice. When? Tonight? Sunset's eyes widened to saucers. What? Well, like you said, this is an emergency, Twilight reasoned. Someone already took the Alicorn amulet, so we need to move as fast as possible to find him and stop them from doing harm to some pony. Sunset ignored the shiver that ran down her spine and forced a smile. You're right. Telling Celestia about this is probably the best idea. Oh yeah? Then why didn't you do it before? Rainbow asked, giving Sunset an icy glare. Ease off, Dave, Applejack warned. Rainbow hopped across their host, continuing to stare Sunset down from her spot in the air. Sunset silently thanked Applejack. Now she knew why Rarity had said most of them believed her. The look in Rainbow's eyes said it all. She believed Sunset was not to be trusted, and Sunset couldn't entirely blame her. The entire party idea was pretty far-fetched. However, she matched Rainbow's cold glaze with a determined look of her own. Sunset wanted them all to believe her. She needed them to. The others watched the two ponies as they stared each other down in heated silence. Neither of them showed any sign of wavering in their contest. Rainbow narrowed her eyes and Sunset clenched her jaw. It was like watching two predatory creatures size each other up before lunging for the kill. Twilight visited her wings, uncomfortable by the tension between her two friends. She cleared her throat loudly, trying to get their attention, but to no avail. Finally, she sighed, Girls! Both ponies broke from their stare down and gave attention to Twilight. We need to get going. The princesses have set a private chariot for us. It should be here in half an hour, so you all need to get prepared. Pinky caught their host together. Come on! We're going on an adventure! Applejack suddenly appeared to have swallowed sour apple. Fine, Abbott! She slugged it over against her face. What's wrong? The sap apples, that's what's wrong. First I recoiled slightly from Applejack's angry voice. Applejack let out a slow breath. Sorry, Si. I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the stunning thief. At least whoever they are, I'm gonna probably miss the sap apple harvest. You know how those apples are. We only get a few hours to harvest them all. She shook her head sadly. I know Apple Bloom's getting older, but between this and being back, there's only so many apples they can get. Mike gave Applejack an apologetic look. I'm really sorry, E.J. I'm sure you'll try your hardest. Bet Sleepy and Skooly will be more than willing to help as well. Applejack cracked a weak smile. I said I wanted the apples harvested, Twi, not destroyed. Everyone gave a light laugh that noticed some of the tension of the room. Twilight put her hand on his shoulder. Don't worry, A.T. So everything will be fine. You're probably right, Twi. But I'm still not going to pop that pony in the snout when we catch him. Twilight paused, unsure how to respond. She said, All right, girls. Go home and get ready. We'll meet the train station in 20 minutes. They nodded in agreement and exited Sukuku Corner, heading in their separate directions. Save for Pinkie Pie began eating up the remains of the party, starting with the leftover food. Sunset followed Spike and Twilight back to the library, having nowhere else to go. The sun had completely vanished from the sky, replacing a waning moon and an ocean of stars. Crickets chirped, disturbing the otherwise silent night with their noisy, confident symphony. Moss danced along the light posts, drawn in by the inviting flame. All Plainfield citizens had turned in for the night, leaving the dirt streets empty. Complete turnaround from that morning. So, Sunset broke the personal silence between the three of them. I'm guessing Rainbow Dash doesn't like me? Well, it's not she doesn't like you, Twilight said slowly. She's just being cautious. Abrasive, Spike murmured. Twilight shushed her. She's just a little protective of us. She feels like it's part of her responsibility as the element of loyalty to keep us safe. Sunset could respect that. Being the sole survivor of a dead future, she felt it was her responsibility to do whatever it took to keep everyone safe the second time around. Still, she couldn't help but wonder how long it would take for Rainbow to trust her. They reached the library and entered the dark tree hollow. Spike quickly turned the lights on and fetched Twilight's saddlebag from out of the closet. Twilight began to ascend the stairs. She turned back to Sunset. You should probably get the hourglass and bring it with you. Sunset almost completely disregarded the hourglass. It's just a little souvenir from the future that may or may not let her go home when this was all over. Why might I need it? Just in case. You never know when you might need it again. Sunset began climbing the wooden staircase after her. I'm pretty sure that this thing isn't going to work again, but alright. I stopped on her landing and entered the room. Sunset continued out to the guest room. She summoned a ball of light at the tip of her horn and pushed it out to the center of the small room, illuminating the entire space. She approached her bed, a tangled mess of blankets and sheets she had never bothered to clean up. Place of dirt and ash clung to the bed, reminding Sunset of the state she had been in only a few hours prior. Only her key state sat next to the unkept bed. All the sand in the top bowl had trickled down, settled at the bottom of the timepiece. Sunset picked up the hourglass at her host and admired the golden facets. Staring at it now, Sunset was amazed at how such a little device had the power to change her so much. She was about to rewrite history, if she did everything right. It's a good thing Twilight made sure only the righteous could use this. She decided what would happen at some point could bounce around through time whenever they wanted. She tilted the timepiece and looked at herself in a reflective glass, admiring the work Rarity had done on her blazing mane. She liked how part of it fell in front of her eye, kind of reminded of her. Sunset swallowed a lump in her throat. She had to go back to Caroline and face Celestia, less than 24 hours after she lied right to the princess's face. She suddenly felt very nervous. And behind that, she felt anger. Anger, hatred, sadness, and fear. It's all very subtle, but Sunset could feel it there, like it was hiding in the back of her heart. The whispers she heard were during her meeting with Celestia returned, calling the princess a liar. Heartless monster. She gets rid of anything the first time it displeases her. She's not fit to sit on the throne anymore. Sunset dropped the hourglass and held hope to her head, suddenly aware she was breathing heavily, like she had just finished a sprint. She shook her head, trying to rid herself of the dark thoughts plaguing her. Sunset, are you ready? Twilight called from the first floor. Twilight's voice cut through the wet bursts, sending them scattering back to the far reaches of Sunset's mind. Sunset took a deep breath before responding, Yeah, be down in a second. She stared at the hourglass lying in front of her. Was that the cause of these dark thoughts? Sunset wanted to think so. But she remembered breakfast, and Twilight had mentioned Celestia's name. A flash of anger had passed through her. It was brief, but it had been there. Tired, Sunset said aloud, trying to reassure herself. I'm just tired, that's all. She might have believed it more if she were really tired. Still, she had no time to put any more thought into it. She hated to make Twilight late. She picked up the hourglass and her magic and walked towards the door before she frowned. She looked back at the object showing her. This isn't going to work. I just can't levitate you everywhere. She set the hourglass down and tapped her chin, pondering a new method of transportation. Her ears twisted as Hostess approached her. Twilight stuck her head around the corner, tiara resting on her head. Sunset, what are you doing? Sorry, Twilight. I was just wondering how I could carry this around easier. He gestured towards the hourglass. Twilight walked to the room to get a better look. Sunset looked at the saddlebag on Twilight's back. Saw something gold sticking out of one of the flaps. Curious, she lifted the object over to herself, revealing a golden necklace with a pink butterfly centerpiece. An element of harmony, she whispered, taking it by simple beauty. Twilight looked up for the hourglass and saw Sunset admiring Flare-Sight's necklace. Sunset, were you snooping through my bag? Twilight asked indignantly. No, Sunset said, waving hers familiarly. It was slipping out of the pocket. I just got a little curious. Sorry. She started to put the necklace back when an idea struck her. She looked between the necklace and hourglass, a smile spreading across her face. Hey, Twilight, can I borrow a piece of rope? 7 ponies and a dragon stood in the clearing, and in front of the Golden Oaks Library, waiting for the royal chariot to whisk them away into the night. Learned in the case of looks Sunset and Rainbow Dash would give one another, the group waited comfortably into the warm night air. Rainbow finally broke the silence and pointed at Sunset. So, what's with the hourglass around your neck? She used a piece of rope Twilight had given her and shrunk the hourglass down to an even smaller size, fastening an easy-to-carry necklace. This is how I got here, Sunset said, lifting it all for to see. I think it creates a small barrier around the user, while simultaneously reversing the flow of the space-time continuum around them. What? It lets me time travel, Sunset said in a monotone voice. Rainbow crossed her hose. Well, why didn't you say that? She ignored the eye roll Sunset gave her and continued. So, you can go wherever you want to in history? Well, theoretically I could, but there are enhancements that restrict it from being misused. I'm even sure I could go home right now. What home? I thought you said everything was destroyed. Rainbow said in a skeptical tone. Rainbow! He cried. Well, she did! Sunset sucked in her breath and slowly released it through her nose. Throwing mud at her really didn't help my case. Sunset was feeling that half the reason Rainbow was being hostile towards her was because of that incident. It had been funny at the time, but now she was beginning to regret it. From above them came the sound of flapping wings as 4 Pegasi guards descended, towing a large golden chariot behind them. They touched the ground and came to a stop in front of Twilight, to whom they gave a deep bow.
We are here to escort you and your company to Canterlot Castle, Your Highness,
the lead guard said. Twilight nodded, gestured to her friends to pile into the chariot. It was a tight fit with all 8 of them. Spike had to sit on Twilight's back, and even then it was tough for Sunset to squeeze in. Eventually, Rainbow volunteered to just fly next to the chariot instead, leaving more leg room. The chariot lurched forward as the guards took a running start before leaping off to the ground and hoisting their passengers into the night sky. They climbed higher and higher, making Sunset's ears pop with the changing altitude. She looked over the side to see Ponyfield become a small, lonely cluster of lights in the dark valley. He looked forward, watching as Caroline drew closer with its inviting glow, lighting up the mountain's face like a heartwarming tree. The wind blew across her face in a inviting manner, just like her mane and fur. Sunset didn't care that it caused her eyes to water. She loved feeling warm air against her. She loved everything about flying. The chariot deep to 50 feet, sending butterflies into her stomach, causing her to grin gleefully. Riptides continued to circle around them, occasionally speeding up in an attempt to coax the guards to fly faster. They, however, kept a constant speed. It was fast, just not fast enough for Rainbow. The group descended over Canterlot, a majestic city sprawling out beneath them. True to Sunset's expectations, the city was awake with excitement. Ponies circling about from one shopping district to another. A large group was gathered in front of an opera house, conversing amicably before the first show began. Another group was seated in the outdoor amphitheater, listening to an orchestra, and filled the entire park with music. Rarity gave a longing sigh. Canterlot is so beautiful at night, isn't it? Sunset watched as they passed by, over a plaza lit up to look like an 8-layered sun, silently agreeing with Rarity. The chariot landed in the castle courtyard, followed promptly by Rainbow. That was pretty fun. I don't get to fly at night that often, she told the others as he hopped out of transportation. Two of the guards unhinged themselves from their harness and made to open the castle doors. They stood at the attention and saluted as Twilight and the company walked by.
Your Majesties are waiting for you in the throne, Your Majesty.
Twilight thanked him and continued to lead their friends to the castle, with Sunset bringing at the rear. The euphoria from flying had abandoned her, placed with nervousness and fear. Noticing he had to stand in front of Celestia, Vinci light to the princess's face, was giving Sunset a deep sense of dread. The lying whispers echoing in her head weren't helping either. The throne room was lit by 2 large chandeliers, though, given the size of the room, they didn't give much light. Celestia knew that was how Luna preferred to conduct court when she held sway over it at night. Remaining light would come from the stars, or on some nights the full moon. Both sisters stood at the foot of the throne, awaiting their guests. Celestia had been about to turn in for the night when she received Twilight's urgent letter. The student had not specified what was wrong, only stated it was important, and it may involve the safety of all Equestria. Though Celestia was worn out from her all-night research and her deals with the court that day, she would gladly give up another night of sleep if it meant keeping her kingdom safe. It is odd, is it not? Luna spoke softly. The Twilight did not state what was awry, saying it was needed to be discussed in person. That is what has me concerned. It must be a great abhorrence if she wishes to speak to me immediately. Luna straightened up, attention focused on the door at the far end of the room. They arrived. As if on cue, the two night guards manning the doors but stomped the butts of their spears against the floor twice, announced, "Presenting Her Royal Highness Princess Twilight Sparkle, the elements of harmony, and guests." The doors opened, and 8 figures marched in, making their way down to carpet before coming to a halt, right the princesses and bowing deeply. Celestia looked over at the group, her eyes resting on the last pony. Sunset Simmer looked up and met her gaze. Celestia saw something stir behind those eyes and quickly looked away, focusing her attention on Twilight. "We're sorry for bothering you this late, Princess," Twilight said sheepishly. Celestia shook her head, ethereal mane ripping with every moment. "Nonsense, Twilight. I always have time for you girls." "And that is what my court is for," Luna said. "The rest of the problem is the hump of the night." Twilight gave Luna a warm smile. "Actually, I'm glad both of you decided to meet with us. This could affect all of Equestria, maybe the entire world." Celestia's expression became serious. All pleasantries were gone. "What is the matter, Twilight?" "Someone has stolen the alicorn amulet from our friend Sakura." Celestia closed her eyes. "I see." This was all she said. When Twilight told her about the events that transpired between the first time somebody had used the alicorn amulet, Celestia had been tempted to take it and to hide it away herself. But, on top of asking her to give the unicorn Trixie a pardon, Twilight had asserted the amulet was in safe hooves, and Sakura would make sure it stayed hidden. The very existence of the amulet was known to a few. In fact, only a spiteful state speeches that had taken it last time made them very lucky. Now that someone else had had it. Luna fizzed, Celestia thought aloud. "I do not believe you'll be lucky a second time. The magic contained within the amulet is vast. I doubt whoever stole it this time will be looking for petty revenge." "Indeed," Celestia nodded. "This could become a serious problem." "Actually, there's more," Twilight interrupted. "Oh," Luna raised an eyebrow. "Please continue then." Twilight visited her wings, looking uncomfortable. "Well, what do you know about the Dark Regalia?" But Celestia and Luna's eyes widened. They shared a grave look and faced Twilight. "Where did you hear about that?" Celestia's voice was barely audible, even with the acoustics of the throne room. Celestia saw Twilight's gaze flicker to sunset and then back. It had been brief, almost instantaneous, but Celestia had caught it. Sunset took slow steps forward until she stood next to Twilight. "I told her about it, Your Majesty." Her voice trembled, but she never looked up from the floor. Celestia looked down at Sunset, was trying to make herself seem as small as possible. "The resemblance is uncanny, practically perfect, and yet..." She pushed the thought aside. She would dwell on it later. "And where did you hear about these artifacts?" Sunset simmered. Sunset looked at her head and looked meekly at the alicorn in front of her. "That's kind of a long story." "I believe it is a story you need to tell." "Yes, Princess." She cleared her throat and began explaining her story when Luna interrupted her. "Wait! Quicksilver! Iron Tail!" She addressed the guards at the door. "Leave us! This is a private matter." They saluted and saw themselves out, shutting the door slightly behind them. Luna lit her horn, and a pale blue light surrounded the door and each of the stained glass windows before fading out. "That is to ensure we are not overheard by unwelcome ears," she explained to her subjects. "Now, Sunset, you may begin your tale." All the attention of the room was now focused on Sunset as she began to speak. "I'm not originally from here. I'm from 50 years in the future, where I'm Princess Twilight's student." A look of confusion flashed across Luna's face before I returned to a calm understanding. Celestia was feeling the exact way but her emotions were perfectly hidden. Celestia hesitated, trying to find the right words for her story. I can't really explain what it was, but it was evil. Just a ball of evil that started tearing the world apart. Nothing could stop it. Her voice grew distant, and her gaze reached the floor again. So, Twilight, before she died, gave me instructions to go back in time and find the Dark Regalia and destroy it. I used this hourglass to come back to this time period so I could stop the end of the world. She hefted it up, ears hung in the corners of her eyes. I'm sorry I lied to you, Princess. Celestia stood there in silence, processing what she just heard. So, you aren't my sunset. Just like her. She pressed the ears aside, slightly disappointed by the dark revelation. Putting the thoughts of yesteryear away, Celestia addressed Sunset. So, you wish to find the Dark Regalia so you could destroy it, prevent a calamity from occurring. Yes, Sunset affirmed. Two Alicorn sisters looked at each other. Silence changed passing between them. Very well, Luna said, turning her head back. Allows now to tell you a story. You are all aware of the heartwarming tale, Celestia started. How the three separate pony tribes united together formed our nation. It was not long after that discord appeared and began its chaotic reign over Equestria. Only when Luna and I discovered the elements of harmony did we stand up to him and first lock him away. Luna stood over. Of course, the ponies celebrated their freedom. So many of them wanted us to lead them that Celestia and I could hardly say no. They welcomed us to the new throne with open hopes and warm hearts. Luna smiled briefly at the memory before she frowned again. But of course, there are always those who are not happy with transitions of power. Spikes grates his head. Wait, some boys didn't want you to be princesses? Why? You guys just beat Discord. It was Celestia's turn to speak. While everyone was happy to not live under Discord's rule anymore, some felt we had no right to interfere with the new government. We were outsiders and had no place of taking the position of royalty. While Commander Hurricane and Chancellor Puddinghead's descendants willingly gave up the positions of authority for the court, Princess Platinum's great-granddaughter, Princess Perot, isn't that always the way? These crystal gems always causing problems. Somewhere, a Steven Universe fan is growling at you. Yeah, I know. Was not so lenient. The other group of followers from each tribe wanted together to protest our new rule. They were the minority, however, and had few followers. I also never believed that the only reason the ponies wanted our continued rule was because we are Alicorns, Luna continued. So they formulated an insane notion to create an Alicorn of their own to challenge the interlopers they had taken to call on us. Whoa. Rainbow held her hopes up. They made an Alicorn, like how Twilight became one? Celestia shook her head. No, they used much darker methods. That is what the Dark Regalia is. 3 pieces of regal wear, infused with dangerous amounts of natural and black magic. Celestia's horn glowed, and an image of the Alicorn amulet appeared in front of her. The Alicorn amulet is a piece of regalia you are already familiar with. Its purpose is to maximize a unicorn's magic to staggering levels. This, you have seen first too. So what you have seen was what happens when you put the amulet on a Pegasi or Earth Pony. What happens? Fluttershy asked. Celestia breathed slowly. They regained the powers of a unicorn, horn and all. There was a collective gasp that echoed through the room. Applejack was the first to recover. Are you telling us that if I put on that amulet, I turn into a unicorn? Yes and no. You wouldn't turn into a unicorn, Applejack. Remember that Earth ponies have their own magic as well. Magic that you would keep upon wearing the amulet. You would, in addition, acquire the type of magic unicorns use. In essence, you would be both a Earth pony and a unicorn. Hello. That's incredible. Disturbing, but incredible. What about the other pieces of the regalia? Twilight pressed. The image of the amulet vanished, and in its place, a picture of a pointed black crown with folded wings on each side appeared. The Tempest Crown, Celestia explained. Able to allow Pegasus to control the most vicious storm and fly at speeds that would make even you, Rainbow Dash, look slow. Rainbow crossed her host, looking none too pleased. If given to any other type of pony, it would give them wings, in addition to the powers of a Pegasi. The ground faded away, replaced by the image of a black and silver hooves, similar to what Celestia was wearing. Finally, the obsidian hoof guards. They grant the rare the strength and durability and longevity of the earth ponies known for. If you wield it, life will spring up almost instantly from where you stepped. Or, it will decay and die in a heartbeat, Luna added. Combined, these three artifacts would change one into an artificial alicorn with deadly amounts of magic. That was what Princess Perdue wanted, an alicorn to challenge our throne. Wait a minute. What, Trixie? Doesn't this sound familiar? Crown that grants you supreme capabilities. Powerful wings that grant you the ability to fly at lightning speeds, and powerful hoof guards. Trixie doesn't know. 8 powerful items you created! Oh. Huh. Not to mention, this plot is starting to sound partly like Heart of Worlds. Oh, interesting. Maybe some part of this was influencing the back of my head and I didn't realize it. It is a possibility. I mean, the Trihorn Crown, the Wings of Lightning. It's amazing how these 3 items layers show up in fall. Let's change the point. Vesper Radiance! Sunset suddenly cried. Everyone fell silent and stared at her. Excuse, Pinky cried. Sorry, let me explain. In my history books, there was an alicorn who tried to usurp the throne around this time, calling herself Vesper Radiance. She almost succeeded until you girls... She gestured to the elements of harmony. Sealed her inside Canterlot Mountain. Sunset slapped her forehead. I can't believe I didn't put it together before. That was the ball of evil. Vesper Radiance breaks free in the future, and all that corruption and magic drove her insane enough to destroy everything. Luna rubbed her chin. I followed it, Simpson, but I question why the elements would fail in the first place. Regardless of the reason, we must ensure it does not happen again. Celestia said. Still, what became of Princess Perdue and the Dark Regalia? Rarity inquired. We caught wind of what Perdue was planning, and went on to stop her before she could put her plan into motion. Celestia explained. We stopped her from putting the regalia on, but she and most of her followers escaped. We never discovered what happened to them. As for the Dark Regalia, Luna jumped in. We decided to hide them away. We would have destroyed them, but the amount of magic contained inside of them is dangerously high. Damaging them could cause unpredictable results. So, where are they? Applejack asked. We do not know. What? They all cried. But you hid them! Spike accused. How could you not know where they are? There was a good amusement in Luna's eye. My apologies for not being clear. I meant we assigned for them to be hidden. You see, we did not trust ourselves with the knowledge of their locations. Imagine an alicorn wearing the Dark Regalia. The look of amusement led to her eyes and expression become distant and reserved. Not wanting that temptation, it was one of my better ideas. Celestia extended a wing and wrapped it around her sister, pulling her close. She knew what was on Luna's mind, how the guilt of Nightmare Moon still occasionally ate at her. Luna leaned in against Celestia, taking her sister's warmth. When she spoke again, her voice was tinged with sadness. To make sure we couldn't use them, we gave each regalia a piece to the respective pony type and to the ponies we trusted the most. The amulet to the unicorns, the crown to the Pegasi, and hoof guards to the earth ponies. They were hidden, lost to history. We're not even sure if they were recorded in the history books. So I groaned, ugh. They aren't in a history book. How are we supposed to find where they are? Well, I do have a feeling that if this was made later on, a bunch of Celestia haters would use this to complain to say that, oh, Celestia was in the wrong for doing this. No, this is a brilliant plan. If Vesper Radiance found them before, they must be recorded somewhere, Sunset pointed out. We have to do some research. Perhaps it would be prudent for you to start your search for a Pegasus artifact in a Pegasus city, Celestia offered. Twilight looked up at her. You mean go to Cloudsdale? Celestia nodded. I've never gone over the books inside the Royal Libraries countless of times. There was something about the Dark Regalia in there. I would have seen it by now. They'll set out first thing in the morning. Luna straightened up, her strong and regal demeanor returning. This will be our first official task as a princess of Equestria, Twilight sparkled. Find and stop Vesper Radiance, recover the Dark Regalia, and bring them back here so we may dispose of them once and for all. Princess? First I raised her hoof, but like a foal in a classroom, asking for permission to speak. Couldn't we use the elements of harmony on the Regalia? Perhaps, but remember, the elements were not made to destroy Fetisai. I am uncertain what they would do to inanimate objects, even if they were filled with dark power. So, how do we destroy them? Rainbow asked. We'll worry about that when we get there, Rainbow, Applejack answered. Yes, it grows late. You'll all have a busy day in front of you, Celestia said. She could hear the weariness in her own voice. I will have the guards on high alert for anyone acting suspicious. But I feel that ultimately stopping Vesper Radiance will come down to the 8 of you. You are the main characters, after all? Please, I implore you, be careful. Her eyes swept up over them, stopping on Sunset again. I could never forgive myself if something bad befell any of you. Her and Sunset's eyes met once more. Sunset winced and brought a hoof to her head, fronting eyes for Celestia. Twilight reached for her. Sunset, are you okay? Yeah, Sunset breathed. Celestia could tell she was lying. Just a headache. I just need some rest. Indeed, as do the rest of you. Celestia spread her graceful white wings and shooed them towards the door. Off you go. The guards will escort you to the guest rooms. We can finish talking before you leave tomorrow. One by one, the ponies bid the princesses good night and filed out the door. Only Luna and Celestia stood alone in the throne room. Celestia looked over her sister, noticing the faraway look in her eye. Luna, are you all right? Luna snapped out of her trance. Oh, sorry, sister. I was merely thinking about how Sunset Simmer, what you told me this morning. Now I'm just as confused as you are. She stepped away from the throne and walked down the middle of the room, gazing at one of the stained windows. She continued. You said she was your student from the past, but this one claims to hail you from the future. Yes, Celestia sighed sadly. Perhaps I was overthinking it. Maybe this Sunset is merely a descendant of her. With the same name at Cutie Mark, the odds are astronomical, though I suppose not impossible. Or perhaps there is more to this story. Perhaps, but I know one thing for certain. Celestia stretched her wings again and walked towards the door. I am tired and off to bed. She stopped and nuzzled Luna on the cheek. Pleasant dreams, dear. If you watching them over, you always are. Celestia beamed at her before exiting the throne room. Sunset listened to the water run out of the faucet into the basin in front of her. She leaned against the countertop in the bathroom, breathing heavily like she just rinsed a marathon. Thunderous hose galloped through her head, pounding against her skull. The room spun as she felt nauseous. The sink finally filled up with the brim of water, and Sunset turned the tap, using her hose rather than magic. She took a deep breath and submerged her face into the cold water, letting it wash over her and massage her aching head. She stayed under her until her lungs begged her to come up for breath. She raised her head from the sink and looked at herself in the mirror. Her hair was plastered to her face in thick strands. Her pupils were huge, clutching her teal irises. It gave her a deranged appearance and only served to worry her more. Am I losing it? Sunset asked her reflection. The entire time she had been in the throne room, she could hear two conversations, one of them only taking place in her head. The whispers continued to speak in the back of her mind, no matter how hard she tried to force them away. They were the quietest when she spoke and told her story. When Celestia looked her in the eyes at the end, they exploded into screams of fury. Images had flashed through her brain faster than she could decipher, leaving her disoriented. It had taken all of her strength not to collapse walking into the guest room. The cold water helped numb Sunset's headache. The whispers faded away once more, leaving the room deathly quiet. Bed, she whispered, pressing herself in the sink to make her way to the bed. She trudged across the velvet carpet and threw herself into the queen-size bed, practically sinking into the soft mattress. She didn't even bother pulling the covers over her. Her eyes slid shut and she fell asleep before the thought even crossed her mind. Sunset sat in a chair, wringing her hose together and biting her lip. She looked about the small waiting room, decorated only with a secretary's desk, chairs, and a few potted plants. The secretary in question sat at her workplace, absentmindedly filing her hose and pretending not to notice the nervous feeling in front of her. Sunset started rocking back and forth, unable to help herself. She couldn't imagine what Princess Celestia wanted with her. Sunset had been minding her own business in class, taking careful notes to what the teacher was saying. The headmaster walked in, said Princess Celestia herself had asked to see Sunset shimmer. Of course, all the cults of fillies oohed at her as she left the room. The headmaster had taken her down to his office, not saying a word as they walked. His stony demeanor made Sunset too nervous to ask what was wrong. When he had arrived, he told Sunset to wait in the chair while he met with the princess. Dread sat in Sunset's stomach like a light weight. She had been attending Princess Celestia's school for gifted unicorns an entire year now. Never had an incident. Never talked back to the teacher. Never got in a fight. Never missed an assignment. What she had done to warrant a visit from the princess? The office door opened up, and Headmaster Inkspot stepped out, gesturing to Sunset.
The princess will see you now.
He smiled, but Sunset couldn't read if it was a good smile or the kind that some ponies got when someone else was in trouble. Reluctantly, she left the safety of her chair and walked to the office. The door shut behind her, and Sunset quickly realized it would be a one-on-one visit. Princess Celestia sat behind Inkspot's desk, rainbow mane waving softly in an non-existent wind. He smiled warmly at Sunset and motioned for her to sit down. Sunset took the chair opposite the desk and silently berated herself for forgetting to bow. How are you today, Sunset Simmer? She asked sweetly. Fine, Your Majesty. Celestia noticed the filly shaking and said, Do not worry, Sunset. You're not in any trouble. Sunset's shoulders sagged as she sighed in relief before tensing up a little again. So if I'm not in trouble, then why did you want to see me, Your Highness? Celestia began shuffling through some papers that sat on the desk. Because I've heard some great things about you, Sunset. Perfect grades, test scores that put some of the upper-class students to shame, displays of exceptional magic. You just borrowed some extraordinary things, Sunset. Sunset blushed furiously at the praise he was receiving. Oh, thank you, Princess. You've earned it, my little pony. In fact, you displayed so much potential, not only in your magic, but in all fields of study, that I offer you something special. What is it? Celestia looked at her in eyes and gave Sunset the most genuine smile. How would you like to become my personal student? Sunset gaped at her, an odd gurgling noise issuing from her throat. Realizing she looked absolutely ridiculous in front of the princess, she snapped her mouth shut and merely nodded as hard as she could. Excellent. Celestia clapped her hands together. Now, certainly you understand. This is a very large responsibility. Though being my apprentice will give you certain privileges, you must continue to conduct yourself in an appropriate manner, and not abuse your new status. Her expression became very serious. I reserve the right to dismiss you, should you take these privileges for granted. Do you understand, Sunset Shimmer? Sunset continued to rapidly nod her head. Of course, Princess. I would never take advantage of you. This is the greatest thing to happen to me. I promise I'll make you proud. Celestia's stern gaze softened back to her motherly smile. I'm sure you will, Sunset. Now, before we can make things official, it is appropriate to inform your parents in case they have any qualms about anything. Sunset felt her happiness shatter in an instant. She slumped back into her chair, looking dejected. Oh, was all she could say. What is wrong, Sunset? Would your parents not be happy about your accomplishment? Sunset shrugged. I don't know. She said, a bitter edge in her voice. They dropped me off as soon as they could and never came back. Celestia held her hoof to her mouth. My goodness, Sunset. I am so very sorry. Sunset didn't say anything. Instead, she stared out the window to the headmaster's personal flower garden, trying to ignore the disdain she felt for her parents. No letter explaining why, no birthday cards, no trinket to remember them by. Would they even care if they knew Celestia had chosen me to be her personal student? Would they finally come back? The pained silence was only disturbed by the shuffling of papers, and Celestia picked through the files in front of her. If I may ask, Sunset, where do you stay? Who's your private caretaker? Miss Sunshine smiles, home for underprivileged angels. Sunset said in the same baritone. It was a softer way of saying orphanage. Ah. Celestia says he pulled up a page of Sunset's background information. It had been signed off by Mrs. Smiles herself, so Celestia assumed that she was Sunset's mother. Well, I hear she is a very sweet mare, and takes excellent care of her charges. Celestia tried to steer the conversation back to a comfortable level. Sunset shrugged again. She's pretty nice. She did encourage me to apply to your school, sign all the papers. Well then, I don't see why she would object to you studying under me, or coming to live in my castle. What? Sunset instantly perked up again. You mean I could come live with you? It would be more convenient for our lessons, would it not? Celestia stood up from her desk and walked towards the front of the room. Come, Sunset. Why don't we finish this conversation on the way to see Miss Smiles? It is a lovely day outside. Sunset never worn a smile so large. She jumped from her chair and skipped after the princess, as a wondrous feeling warmed her heart. Best day ever! Sunset wearily opened her eyes, only to see more darkness. She turned her over and looked out the window, seeing the stars in the night sky. I can't be more asleep for a few hours, then. She rolled her back and stared at the ceiling. The dream pressed her mind. No, it couldn't have been a dream. It felt too familiar. Like it actually happened, but that's impossible. I'm Twilight student. Perhaps her subconscious had crossed the two events into one, so he couldn't recall when she had ever been inside the headmaster's office. The feeling the dream gave off was like a memory she had forgotten a long time ago, finally reclaimed. Sunset shook her head. Maybe I'm overthinking things. It's been a long couple of days, and I haven't gotten any decent sleep in a while. I just need to rest before I really do lose my mind. Realizing she had never tucked herself in, Sunset scrambled underneath the covers and cuddled up to her pillow. It was just a dream, she murmured before falling back to sleep. Unaware, Princess Luna standing guard on the roof of her room, deep in thought. Luna likes to watch. Pass it on!